Among the mysterious pages of our planet, stories with the sudden disappearance or appearance of people occupy a special place. The number of such phenomena is quite large, and it is not excluded that some of the stories about the disappearance of people simply embellished mysticism. But what to do with those of the evidence that have been repeatedly verified, and sometimes were classified, so as not to confuse the minds of contemporaries? Representatives of ancient civilizations also paid attention to the sudden disappearance of tribesmen, so when describing the battle in ancient Greece, it is mentioned about the dissolution of the warrior in the air, and which was launched dart. In this case, all that happened took a fraction of a second, so that the launched weapon fell to the ground without reaching the target, and in place of the missing warrior remained his weapon and shield. There was no worse shame than to lose a shield for a Greek warrior, so the assumption of lightning flight is not considered here. However, not only cases of sudden disappearances are known, but also cases of strange people appearing. Fanatical clergymen of the Middle Ages attributed the vaporization of people to the devil, but if there was a mysterious return of the missing, he was waiting for the most warm reception at the stake of the Inquisition. A similar case occurred in 1593 in Mexico, where a man in a strange military uniform appeared out of the sky, claiming to be from the Philippines, where the governor had just been murdered. At the time, Maoris were violent, and it didn't take long for the Inquisition to figure out what to do with the obscure alien. Sailors arriving on the ship a few months later confirmed the words of the unfortunate Filipino. In France in 1867, a certain Lucien Bussier felt attacks of weakness and turned to his neighbor Dr. Bonvillain. Turning away from the patient for a second, the doctor was surprised to find that Bussier disappeared, but his clothes remained. The search for the man was unsuccessful. Disappearance to nowhere is quite often observed in those who by their occupation is associated with the elements. These are pilots and sailors. There are more than enough stories about meetings of Flying Dutchman, ships without crew, but quite often airplane crews or even airplanes themselves disappear without a trace. In 1924, two British pilots made an emergency landing in the sands of Iraq. Judging by the footprints, the pilots stepped not far from the airplane, after which the footprints in the sand broke off. Quicksand and wells were not found in the vicinity. There were no storms, but where the two Englishmen went is still unknown. However, not only one or two people disappear without a trace, hundreds and even thousands of people disappear. In 1937, during the war between Japan and China, a Chinese detachment of 3,000 soldiers to detain enemy troops was sent to the border of the Yangtze River, but the next day received a report that people disappeared. All of them. No bodies, no weapons, absolutely nothing was found. Repeated attempts to discover the fate of the detachment were in vain. The archives of Japan also contain no information about the capture of 3,000 soldiers. It is an unsolved mystery to this day. In 1930, all the inhabitants of the Eskimo village of Anjikuni, northern Canada disappeared. According to eyewitnesses, the houses were empty, the tethered dogs died of starvation, and the local cemetery was dismantled, and even all the bones of the buried were missing. The option that the inhabitants suddenly packed up and left for some unknown place and for some unknown reason sounds implausible. Eskimos would never have left their faithful dog friends to die a hungry death. In extreme case, they would have untied them. And no one would have thought of disturbing the peace of their ancestors and disturbing the cemetery. Besides, the ground frozen for many meters would not allow to do it without the help of machinery. Often people who have fallen out of time do not remember anything about their extratemporal stay, and do not feel the duration of their absence, and attempts to find out the truth under hypnosis cause time travelers only vague images of strange people and unfamiliar places. Often people return with their memory completely erased, so it is impossible to establish not only their date of birth or place of residence, but even their own name. There are cases when people return after many years. One artisan from Italy melted in the air before the eyes of many witnesses, and only 22 years later was back at the place of his disappearance. Some scientists explain such disappearances with return by the state of trance, in which a person is immersed by unconscious self-hypnosis, in which state they enter under the influence of external influences, noise of rain, monotony of the road. At the same time, the consciousness draws vivid real images. Of course, the sense of time is lost. Perhaps such moments are present in some cases, but this does not explain spontaneous disappearances. Some people who returned after vaporization claimed that they had been to other worlds and that they had been abducted by representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations. However, most of such people do not remember anything. The universe is infinite and mysterious. It is quite possible that under certain circumstances there are time holes in which people fall. It is possible that a person simply disintegrates into atoms when passing through a time hole, but with equal probability, he can be thrown into the past or the future.